Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us here for our webinar on law firm and leadership development. Really pleased to have you join us. My name is Paul Myers. I am the CEO and chairman of Advocate Capital. I've been with the firm now for about 22 years. Have really enjoyed it. Our mission every day is to help an ever-increasing number of plaintiff attorneys get even better results for their clients. So hopefully this webinar will help you along your way. I'm joined today by my good friend Duncan Manley. He is a professional EOS implementer at EOS Worldwide. Duncan has been helping businesses succeed for more than 30 years. EOS Worldwide, where he is now, is a growing organization of successful entrepreneurs from a variety of different backgrounds who are passionate about helping other businesses succeed. With over 16 years of history and more than 190,000 companies currently using their tools, EOS is a proven system that consistently helps companies achieve more revenue, growth, and profit while delivering a better balance of life to business owners and leaders. Throughout his career of over 30 years, Duncan has worked with leadership teams at over 40 different companies. He's an experienced facilitator and coach, and he's particularly skilled at helping entrepreneurs and leadership teams realize their potential. So Duncan, welcome. I'm glad you could join us today.
Thank you, Paul, for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and thrilled to have you, Duncan. Duncan is down in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm here in our studios in Nashville. I wanted to give a few housekeeping items before we get rolling. Number one, don't worry about trying to write down everything you see here or remember everything you hear. After we're done with this and we edit it a little bit, we're going to send the full video of this webinar to all of the registrants. So you'll have that to refer back to. At the end of the webinar, we'll make sure to get you Duncan's contact information so that you can reach out to him if you have any additional questions after this is over. And finally, as we go through it, please note that there's a question box on your webinar app. So if you have any questions as we're going through, please just type them in there. Our folks here in the studio will let me know that there's a question and I can relay it over to Duncan. And then there will also be just a more generic Q&A session at the end of this. And as you listen to this, I want to make sure that although EOS is applicable to about every type of industry you could think of, I know that here at Advocate, we have at least 4 or 5 of our clients that we've already heard from who have told us that they've used this system with huge amounts of success in growing their law firm. And as it mentioned in the bio, not only growing their law firm, but doing it in such a way that adds to the owners and the partners' quality of life. It's really a remarkable system. Another firm, there's a book out on the market called Fireproof. You may have heard of Mike Morse of the Morse Law Firm in Detroit. He wrote this book about how he and his law firm implemented the EOS strategy to really skyrocketing effects. So as you listen, understand that all of these things are really applicable to law firms, but particularly to plaintiff law firms. So again, thank you all for joining us, and Duncan, thank you for being here. So we will, I need to give a quick disclaimer that although this is great information, please know that it's for information purposes only. Any tax, accounting, or legal advice should really come from a licensed professional. So this is good for information, great for you guys to learn a little bit more about how you might grow your firm. But as far as any tax, legal, or accounting advice, please reach out to qualified professionals. So with that, I wanted to ask Duncan if he would, just to give a very 40 or 50,000 foot overview before we drill down a little bit as to what is EOS. I know it's Entrepreneurial Operating System, but tell us a little bit more about what it is and how you go about, how a firm would go about utilizing it.
Okay. EOS is, as Paul said, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It is a complete system, a complete set of simple, practical tools that an organization uses to get more of what they want from their business. And when an organization implements EOS, they get better at 3 things we call vision, traction, and healthy. So vision's about getting the leadership team 100% on the same page, 100% aligned with where you're going and how you're going to get there. Traction is really turning that leadership team into an execution engine really instilling discipline and accountability and helping them bring all aspects of that vision to life. And then healthy is getting the leadership team to be more functional and cohesive, because a lot of times the leadership teams don't work well together. And what we find is that as goes the leadership team, so goes the rest of the organization. So you wind up with an organization that where everybody's 100% aligned. They understand the vision. They want to be a part of it. No matter where you go in the organization, you see people executing on your vision with discipline and accountability, and the whole team is advancing together as a functional, cohesive group of people that enjoy spending time together.
Well, it sounds like something we should all aspire to, regardless of if it's a business or not. Tell us, there's a slide up here now. Tell us a little bit about what you consider to be the types of companies or organizations that could really thrive using EOS, your target client.
Okay, look, before I jump there, let me say one more thing. EOS has been around for about 15 years.
Okay.
We have professionally implemented EOS in about 22,500 companies across the world, and we've held over 150,000 session days. So just my point there is what I'm sharing with you today is, road tested, proven. I'm not, we're not practicing on anybody. Our target client, the ones who work best with EOS, are entrepreneurial companies. They typically have between 10 and 250 employees, although we've got some that are bigger and some that are smaller. They are growth oriented and open-minded. The leadership teams are have to be willing to be open and honest and vulnerable with each other. They don't always start out that way, but they need to be willing, and they're typically more afraid of the status quo than they are of change.
Got it. Yeah, because I mean, some of these things I read through. There's another book, Duncan, that you shared with me called Traction, which is more of a the Fireproof is almost a case study in how a plaintiff law firm used these principles to advance their business. Traction is a little bit more generic in its approach. It kind of describes the process in an industry not specific way. And what really struck me was the amount of change that it does bring about. And it's not, I guess change is always a little frightening and scary, but the amount of change that these firms underwent as they went through this process is really impressive. And it's all positive change at the end of the day, but it's still something, like you said, you need to be vulnerable and humble and willing to make that change and desirous of making that change. Right,
that's exactly right. And a lot of companies need a system like EOS, but part of the magic is that you have to understand that you really need to make a change. You need to do something to get better, to improve yourself, and those people tend to be the best clients for EOS.
Excellent. I know that a lot of the things that I've read talk about frustrations that I think a lot of small business owners and plaintiff law firms would, our typical client is right in that wheelhouse. Our typical client probably has 20 to 25 employees. Some of them are much larger. We have some that have up to 200 or 300, but most of them are in that 10 to 50 employee range. And I know that as a small business owner, there are these frustrations that you talk about. Why don't you share a little bit here?
Okay. Yeah, so these frustrations are the things that are driving these business leaders crazy, and they're typically the reasons that they entertain the idea of EOS in the first place. So let's just walk through those quickly. So the first one is lack of control. So the leader feels like the business is controlling him or her rather than the other way around. I heard somebody describe this as the business is a van driving down the interstate, and the leader's hanging off the back, swinging off the doors, just trying to hang on, to dear life. So lack of control is one of the big frustrations. The second one is people, and to be perfectly frank, most of the issues that a business has are people related. But when we talk about people here, we mean not only employees, but also customers. Mm-hmm. The leaders typically feel like, well, nobody really cares as much as I do, and that drives them crazy. The third frustration that we see is a lack of profit. And they just feel like they're not being compensated for the time and the energy and the effort that they're putting into the business. The fourth frustration is that they're hitting the ceiling, and this is just a natural part of a business. It's part of the natural cycle. Hitting the ceiling is just this feeling that you get stuck. You're cruising down the road, everything seems to be working, and you hit the ceiling and you're stuck. Sometimes that's the whole enterprise, sometimes it's just a part of the enterprise, and sometimes it's a person. But that is a big source of frustration. And then the last thing that we hear also is that, you know, the business leaders are, you know, they have peers, they might have a coach, they're reading all these books and learning these new things, and they're trying to apply all of these things to the business in kind of a rapid fire fashion, and nothing seems to be working. And that in itself is frustrating, but then the rest of the organization feels this sense of frustration that, you know, nothing is working. This is kind of a flavor of the month thing, and I'm not going to pay that much attention to it. So somewhere in those five frustrations, or the combination of those five, is really the impetus to reach out to EOS to entertain the idea of implementing it in a business.
Well, a couple of things you said really rang true with me personally. In my experience here at Advocate, sometimes the lack of control, you feel that, but sometimes the irony there, sometimes you have to give up control on a number of things. I had my predecessor as CEO of Advocate always used to like to tell the leaders of the company that your job is to work yourself out of a job. Your job is to identify and train and engage the folks who work for you so that you can give them more and more to do. So you are not working in the business, you're working on the business, you're thinking outside the box. So it's almost like you're trying to work yourself out of a job, that you train and delegate so much that you have nothing left to do. I mean, you'll never get to that point, because hopefully you're getting more things, but getting a handle on that control sometimes means giving up things, which is always found to be ironic, but it's very true. And then hitting the ceiling and getting stuck is another one. I mean, especially if, say you're a law firm that has one owner, and you feel like you need to take care of everything. There's only so much you can do. There's going to be a ceiling at which you can do no more. There's only so many hours in the day, only so efficient that you can be, so much efficiency that you can have. You have to be able to delegate and bring in people with different ideas. And that's where an EOS coach could, I think, be really impactful, is to help you think outside that box, figure out ways to multiply yourself through delegation, you know, attract and retain the best talent, sometimes spend money ahead of the curve. So it is a lot of that giving up of the control, I think, that gets people to that next step and maybe beyond that ceiling.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When when you start your firm initially, you're probably the one who is doing most of the work. You've got your hands in everything. And when you hit that ceiling, you've got so much business that you can't really do it all yourself. And so you have to replicate yourself. And there, that you delegate and elevate. So you push things off to other people, and you really focus on your unique ability, the thing that you do that adds the most value to the firm. Right. And that's how you break through the ceiling, and that's how you grow. And you're exactly right. If you're not willing to do that, then you've really put a constraint on the firm, and the firm can only get to be as big as, you know, the amount of work that you're able to do, and you really find yourself not being able to go out of town or really enjoy your life because you're stuck.
Right. Well, all this is great. Share with us a little bit. They see up here now a graphic, Duncan, of the model. Kind of walk through these 6 areas and how they all tie in together and how you work through them.
Okay. So this is the EOS model, and EOS has been around for about 15 years. Gino Wickman is the founder of EOS, the creator of EOS. And he worked with lots and lots of different entrepreneurial companies, and he saw these two different types of companies. On the one hand, you have these companies that are working really hard, they're hitting all their numbers, everything seems to be coming together. That's about 5% of the companies. And then on the other side, you've got 95%, they're working hard, they're not hitting their numbers, it's not coming together, they're frustrated. And he asked himself, well, what is it that these companies are over here are doing that these aren't? And how can I figure out what that is and teach these other companies? So that's how EOS was born. And so he started with this discovery that all entrepreneurs and their leadership teams are dealing with 136 issues simultaneously. But those issues, when you dig down and figure out what they are, they're really symptoms of a root cause. They exist because of weakness in one of the 6 key components of your business. And so that's how this model was created. And so these are the 6 key components of your business, and I'll just walk through and talk about each one of them. So we'll start at the top. So the first component of your business is the vision component. And this, again, is just getting everybody 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. The second component is the people component. And quite frankly, you can't execute a great vision without great people. And so essentially, this is about getting the right people, those people who share your core values, into the right seats. And then the third component is the data component. And this is just about making decisions based on real facts and figures, on objective data, rather than the subjective, sort of ego-driven, emotional decision-making that plagues so many companies. And so what we find is that when we strengthen vision, people, and data components, is that everything becomes transparent and crystal clear. And so what that means is all your problems and your challenges and your obstacles just fall out into the open for everybody to see. And so that brings us to that fourth component, the issues component. And this is just about creating a discipline of identifying your issues as they arise, and then setting them up and knocking them down and making them go away forever for the long-term greater good of the business. And then the fifth component is the process component. And this is just figuring out your handful of key processes and making sure that you're doing those the right and the best way every time. This is what creates consistency and scalability, but it also makes your processes easier to manage, more profitable, and more fun. And the sixth component then is the traction component. And this is just taking that vision and bringing it down to the ground and executing on it with discipline and accountability. And this is the one of all the components, this is the one where we see the most weakness in companies. And as Gino says, vision without traction is hallucination. So really, all of these components are really important. It's important to strengthen all of them. I want to talk a second about kind of the EOS journey. The whole point of this is to get each one of these 6 components to 100% strong. And knowing really that that's utopia, it's not ever going to happen. So really our mission in life is to get you to 80% strong in each one of these 6 key components. And we know that most companies come in at about the 20% mark, and they're really succeeding in spite of themselves. Now, I do frequently make a second pass around this model. You'll see underneath where, for example, where it says vision, there's 2 bullet points there. These are the tools and the disciplines that we use to strengthen each one of these components. And it takes a little while to walk through those. So I'm not going to do that today, but I do want to just say on the 8 questions, we'll talk about that one for a second. So that's just, we create the vision and create that 100% alignment with the leadership team by answering 8 simple questions. And so what are they? What are your core values? What's your core focus? What's your 10-year target? What's your marketing strategy? What's your 3-year picture? What's your 1-year plan? What are your rocks? What are your 90-day priorities? And then what are your issues? And so we spend a couple of days together hashing that out, making sure that everybody's 100% on the same page and agrees with every word. We've got a 2-page document that's really elegant in its simplicity, but it's intended to get everybody 100% on the same page. And we've got similar tools for each of these other disciplines, and we just work through those to get you to the 80% strong.
Well, I mean, and so much of what you said here, we've done here at Advocate. And one thing that I know that Mike Moore said in his book is how important having a coach is to do this. And we found that it's so much easier if you have an external person who's experienced in guiding people through this process, really work with your team. We've had a lot of success in that, because all too often, if I'm up there running the meeting, people are going to be a little less willing to maybe put out there what they really think. But if you got a third party up there, it becomes more of a discussion, and the leader of the company is a mere participant along with the rest of his leadership or her leadership team. It becomes much more of a free flow of ideas, and so many more things get put out on the table that might or might not be things to pursue, but at least they're put out there and discussed. So I've found that having a third party lead that discussion and facilitate, a third party that knows what they're doing there, is critically important.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think if EOS resonates, it's a great idea to hire an implementer. An implementer can help you implement in the shortest amount of time with the highest impact.
Right.
And I do have, one of the things that I do see is that people will read the book Traction,
right.
Which is really kind of the textbook on EOS, and they will implement it themselves. We call them self-implementers, and they start to go down the road. But what we find is that they don't want to ask themselves the hard questions. They don't really want to go there. Mm-hmm. And they oftentimes will focus on the things that are more fun or more familiar. And so as a result of that, they're not quite getting the bang for the buck. The system isn't as impactful as they wanted it to be. And so then they'll come and talk to me or another implementer about helping them get back on track.
Yeah, it's one of those things that this is kind of a adage my dad used to tell me. He said, you know, sometimes, son, the best tool in your toolbox is a checkbook. His point is, do the things that you do well and know how to do. Those things that maybe you don't know how to do and do well, hire somebody to do, because you're probably going to end up having to pay him to do it anyway. Now, he was probably speaking a lot more to things around the house, but it holds true in a lot of business applications as well. And honestly, part of EOS, especially for the leader of the company, is I think you mentioned earlier, was it delegate and elevate? Yes. Part of that process that I've read about is writing down all the things that you have to do every single day, not just the leader of the company, but everybody in the firm eventually, writing down everything you have to do every day, and then kind of breaking it into sections that say, here's what I really like to do and what I'm really good at. Here's what I really don't like to do, but I'm pretty good at. And here are the things I don't like to do and I'm really not good at. So yeah. And that starts to give a little clarity to, all right, this is really where I should be spending my time, over here on those things that I like to do and I'm really good at, and then finding people who are good at the other things and delegating and training and elevating those people. And so I think that having, you know, potentially spending that little bit of extra money and having a professional facilitator really does help you get a lot more out of the EOS system.
I agree with that.
All right. Well, I guess the next step here, Duncan, is to take us a little bit through how, if somebody wanted to do this, how it would look. And this is a great flow chart as to the implementation process. So walk us through this, please.
Okay. So this is the EOS proven process. It's one of the tools that we help you implement. But the EOS journey, if you choose to work with an implementer, looks just like this. So on the left side, you'll see the little circle that says a 90-minute meeting. And so here, an implementer meets with you, gives you a free session for 90 minutes. And here we talk a little bit about EOS and like I would talk about myself, talk about EOS. We talk about the company, where have you been, where you are, where you're going. And then we just open up the fire hose and hit you with all the tools that we've got. So what that means is we talk about that model, we talk about the 6 components, and then we really dig into those tools that you saw on the bullet points. And then we talk about this slide right here, the implementation process. And really what we're looking here is to see if there's a fit. Is your organization a good fit for EOS, and are you a good fit for the implementer? And you know, if the answer to the EOS question is no, then that's the end of the discussion. You know, we can always find another implementer if there's somebody you know who has a different sort of personality that resonates with you. So that's it. The first is the 90-minute meeting. If you like what you hear, then the next thing that we do is schedule a focus day. And if all of these boxes that you see, the 3 blue ones and the 4 orange ones, those are full session days. So it's 7 hours, give or take an hour. The implementer meets with the leadership team. On this focus day, we are setting up these foundational tools. We're teaching you how to be an execution engine. We start with traction first in EOS, so we're doing these foundational tools, really starting to create that discipline and accountability in the organization. So you walk out of that full day with some homework. And we get back together 30 days later in vision building day 1. We hit those tools again, make sure they're working for you and work out the bugs and the kinks. And then we start to answer those 8 questions that I talked to you about earlier. So you'll see those listed down here below vision building 1 and 2. So we just work through each one of those questions and find the answer for your unique organization. On the first day, we'll get through, you know, 3 or 4 of those questions. And then we end the day, you walk out of there with some more homework to do. And then when we come back for vision building 2, 30 days later, we hit those focus day tools again, make sure they're working for you. And then we answer the rest of those 8 questions. So at the end of our 3rd day together, at about the 60-day mark, you've mastered these focus day tools. So that just means you understand how to use them. You're actively using them at the leadership team level. You're getting better and better. You can see the improvement. And then you've also agreed 100% on your vision. Everybody in the leadership team is 100% on the same page. There's no ambiguity. And that's really where the magic happens, when you can get all of your human energy focused in one meaningful direction. So after we finish vision building 2, then the next step, there's really a transition from teaching and learning to execution mode. And so those orange boxes are quarterly meetings. And so your implementer meets with you 1 day a quarter, 1 full day a quarter with the leadership team. And you can see the sorts of things that we're working on. But essentially what we do is every quarter, we look back and see how we did. And then we come back and we check in with the vision, make sure everybody's on the same page, because a lot of times you're not. And then we set our priorities for the quarter. And then we jump back down in the business and start running again. The part of the beauty of EOS is that we put you in this 90-day world. You'll see that in the middle of those orange boxes. So when we're building out the vision, we do set that 10-year target, so we know where you're going long term. We take it down to 3 years. So what does the business need to look like in 3 years on the way to hitting that 10-year target? And then we go down to 1 year. We make some financial projections for the 3 year and the 1 year. And then we set 3 to 7 goals for the year. And then we take that down another notch and we set those rocks. And the rocks are 90-day priorities. That's where we're getting you into this 90-day world. We identify 3 to 7 priorities for the company, ultimately 3 to 7 for each person on the leadership team, but those are the most important priorities. And those are the things that we focus on executing throughout the quarter. And so, you know, I like to sum up EOS by saying that what we're doing is predicting your future. We predict it with the 10-year, the 3-year, and the 1-year, and then the 90-day. And then through this execution process, we make those predictions come true. So I will say that this process right here that you see in front of you, it takes, you are with an implementer 5 days on average, about 5 days a year. And it takes about 2 years before you're ready to graduate. And that just means you get up to that 80% mark that we talked about. So you're 80% strong in each one of the 6 key components. At that point, we've got companies that say, okay, I'm ready to graduate. I don't need to work with an implementer anymore. There's a big celebration, and they go off and do it themselves. But we do have also plenty of companies that say, you know, I like having this third party here holding me accountable, asking me those tough questions. So it works different ways.
Yeah, that was a question that came through. After, I guess, this seems to anticipate maybe a year, a little bit over a year on this implementation process. And then for like a second year, would you go through that 90-day world again?
No, well, what happens is after you have finished your vision building day 2, you get into that quarterly pulsing. And so we do 3 one-day quarterlies and 1 2-day annual every year.
Right.
And it marches along. So you would do that a year or 2, and then until you're ready to graduate.
Okay. And then after, say, if it's 2 years and you quote unquote graduate, but you think, you know, I'd like to have, you know, an implementer come in for the 2-day annual planning to help us through. Does it become flexible after that, or how does that work?
It happens different ways. Sometimes we do have clients who will say, okay, I don't want you to run my quarterlies, but I want you to come in and run my annual. And so there's plenty of times that happens. And sometimes they'll graduate and then they'll run a couple of quarterlies on their own, and then they'll come back and say, okay, I want you to run my annuals, or I want you to run both.
Got it. So, yeah, I didn't realize what I was getting into. I need some help thing.
Exactly.
I get it. And, you know, as I think you said, gosh, I mean, 100,000 some odd companies have used this strategy, this EOS strategy. As I mentioned, at least 4 or 5 of our clients that have reached out to me since we publicized this webinar to tell me, but that's just people who proactively reached out to me and told me that they've used it with a great deal of success. Maybe you could share a little bit about some of the results, or maybe some anecdotes that you've been privy to.
Okay. You know, typically what I see as an end result of EOS is just better execution, better revenues typically increase, profits definitely increase, the leadership team gets stronger and more healthy. And what that means is that the leader, the original leader, the one who was frustrated, can lean on the leadership team and doesn't have to do everything him or herself. And so that results in a better life for that particular leader, because you don't have to be there the whole time. You can go take some time off and not have to worry.
Another adage that I always heard from my predecessor was, the test of what kind of leader you are is how your team performs when you're not there. And he was a big proponent, as am I. Hey, when you're not here, don't be here. You know, when you're on PTO, go be on PTO. Don't check email all the time. But, you know, just go. You need to wipe your mind clean of this place. But it is true. What kind of leader and delegator and planner and trainer, and how you engage your people, the people who work with you, that shows when you're not there. If everything runs smoothly, it's like, that's great. It doesn't mean we don't need you. It just means that you have done such a great job in delegating and training and elevating the people who work for you, that you don't have to, it's not so mission critical that you're just living in that business, and you can actually go enjoy some time off and clear your head and come back refreshed.
Yes, we call that the EOS life, and
Yeah.
It just means that you've got some time for other passions.
Right. Right. Well, I know for a fact that all of our clients have other passions. I hear about them all the time, and it's great. So I would love for all of them to take advantage of this type of program where they can actually find that time to go enjoy those passions.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit more about a couple of results.
Okay.
I've been an operations guy for 30 years. I love helping companies. My passion is helping companies get better. It's just really fulfilling and really exciting to me. And I want to see these numbers that say, well, we did, X 15% increase in this and 25% increase in that. Really, when we talk about EOS, every company is different. They, some might want to grow a little more slowly. Some want to, they're all the different visions and the plans. They're all a little bit different. So that makes it hard for us to sort of quantify any sort of a result. But right. I did want to talk for a minute about the book Fireproof that Paul showed earlier. So Fireproof it was a firm, the Mike Morse law firm, which is up in the Detroit area. And fascinating story. I really recommend the book. It's a quick read. It's really interesting. But Mike Morse one day came into his office and realized that his pipeline, his pipeline of new cases that was coming from a bigger firm was completely shut off, and he was, up a creek without a paddle. He had really he had a serious problem, and that's what brought him to EOS. And his implementer was actually Gino Wickman in about 2008. And so he, one of the stats that I loved was that his annual settlements went from $60 million in 2011 to $160 million in 2018. Mm-hmm. So he was that firm leader, that managing partner, that firm owner who was doing everything. He was in the middle of everything, and he realized through the EOS process that he didn't really have to do that he could delegate and elevate. And he didn't. He pushed to his team of lawyers, and he pushed to his administrative assistant and his paralegal, and it really worked for him. And he built a dashboard, he calls it the Jumbotron, that has all of his numbers. And in EOS, those numbers are really important. We look at those numbers, they tell a story, they tell us if we're on track for the quarter and if we need to intervene. Think of it as the check your engine light on in the car. You right. See those numbers and you're not hitting your goals, then you need to go see the mechanic, or in this case, you need to take some sort of action and get yourself back on track. And those are the sorts of things that EOS does really well. And anyway, I highly recommend the book. If you're interested in EOS or just how to improve your law firm, it's a great read.
Well, and something else that Mike Morse did that I really thought was impressive is he hired a chief operating officer, and he went out and actually spent some money. And he was, I think he had to be coached hard to go do that. Number one, it meant giving up control of a lot of things that maybe he wanted to keep control of, but it also meant spending some money, because the fellow, I can't remember the fellow's last name, but he didn't come real cheap because he was a very qualified individual. And what he found is that was just another investment that he made. All of a sudden, he had a trusted person on his team that shared his values, understood the why of what he was trying to do, that could really take a lot of those things that were, remember the delegate and elevate process, all these things over here that he was both not good at and didn't like to do, but were critically important to the success of the business, John was really good at. And he took that on and freed up Mike to go do all the things that he was good at and could add more value. So sometimes it takes not only a step out into the abyss of giving up the control, but sometimes the financial step out into the abyss as well to ensure that you're properly staffed and have the right people in the right seats, as the people section of the process said.
Yes, exactly. And you know, the other one other thing that he said that I really liked was, you know, he said if you have, he said all lawyers, you know, one day the biggest case you ever saw comes in and falls into your lap, and what do? You know, you really work on a beautiful plan to execute. You've got this really big plan to execute the case and create that outcome that you want. And he said, you also need to take that same attitude when you're running your business. You need to have that same level of planning. And, you know, he makes the comment that I knew how to run my firm like a law firm, but I didn't know how to run it like a business. And so when he changed the way that he was thinking about his law firm, that's when he was able to bring in that COO. We call in EOS, we call that position the integrator.
Right.
That's when he started really digging into the numbers. He started doing his predictions, making sure that his numbers were on track. And that just, you know, it's a beautiful story and a really great success story in the EOS world.
It is, and you brought up a really, I love that quote from Mike Morris as well about I knew how to be a good law firm, I knew how to be a good business, and a lot of times, especially the plaintiff lawyers I found are so passionate about what they do and the people that they help, their clients. You know, every one of their clients probably walked in there. I don't think I've ever been in a conference room of one of our clients that didn't have a box of tissues sitting on the conference room table, and the reason is because 9 times out of 10, when their clients come in, they probably had one of the worst days of their lives in the not too distant past. And these folks are so passionate about getting justice for their clients, which is hugely important. But I always try to remind, it's also important to remember that you're a small business, that you're a business, and the better you can be at being a business, the more people that you can help and the more impactful that you can be for those people. And so it's really important to remember, yeah, it's important to be passionate. It's important to remember really the why of what you're doing. But in order to do that better and more effectively and for more people, it's important to remember that you're a business as well. And plus, treating it like a business and employing something like the EOS really is a huge benefit to the people who work for you. And so, you know, part of what you want to do is have happy, healthy, engaged associates who work for your firm. Having a program like this really helps them attain the same things that you're trying to help the leader and the owner of the business attain as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It really does. It all starts, in my opinion, with understanding why, what you're doing. That's the vision, I suppose, having core values, but really finding and retaining and engaging the best people. That's what's going to drive it. And this whole system revolves around, to some extent, that. If you get down to it, it's really giving all of the people who work for your firm the tools that they need to be more impactful and more successful. And that's in turn going to help the whole firm. So yes. I know we've answered a few questions as we've gone through here. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions or comments for Duncan. If you do, you got a few minutes here to get, or I guess a minute or two to get them in. If not, that's okay. We've had a few come through, and I've asked Duncan as we've gone along. And we'll, you know, again, as I mentioned, we'll send this to you guys in a video format so that you can look back through it. And if you have any questions after the fact, we're going to give Duncan's contact information here shortly, so you can feel free to reach out to him directly. So again, Duncan, thank you for joining us. I know that we mentioned 2 books that if you guys wanted to read a little bit more about it, one is, well, I guess the first one is Traction by Gino Wickman. This is, as Duncan said, kind of the textbook for EOS, and it's a really good, easy read. And then for a more detailed look into how the EOS strategy worked for plaintiff law firm, Fireproof by Michael Morse is a fabulous read. for those of us involved in this industry. So Duncan, with that said, thank you. Guys, you can see his contact information here, his phone number, website, and email. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to him. I think it's been a great session. Duncan, thank you for joining us from Birmingham.
Thank you for having me. And again, please reach out if you got questions, if I can help you. And we have EOS implementers across the country and really across the world. And so I can also connect you with local people if that makes sense for you.
Great. Duncan, thanks a lot. And thank you for all of our registrants and attendees. Look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.
Thank you.